I'm Leah Lawrence.
And I'm her husband, Mitch Lawrence.
And you are listening to Tailgate Tales, a special series of the Southern Spirits podcast.
In celebration of football season, each Saturday we are visiting a different Southeastern Conference school and delving into a little collegiate folklore.
And what would a tailgate party be without beer? So, what are we drinking today, Mitch?
Well, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be drinking Monkey Knot India Pale Ale. This is proudly brewed and packaged by Straight to Ale in Huntsville, Alabama. 7.25% alcohol by volume. There's nothing really on the can. It's just their slogan of Southern born, Southern bred. No, brewed, not bread. Southern born, Southern brewed. So, let's read the online description of this beer. Albert, Abel, Gordo, Miss Baker, Bonnie, Goliath. Between 1948 and 1961, these primate pioneers and others bravely went where no man had ever gone before, paving the way for manned U.S. spaceflight. This hoppy little monkey of a beer is a tribute to those simian heroes of yesteryear. It has a citrusy, floral hop aroma, a strong malt body, and a crisp finish.
And it also has a very angry-looking monkey on the can.
It does. I love the picture of it.
It's really cool.
It's wonderful. It's like most beers brewed around here in the Huntsville area. A lot of their stuff has, like, space-themed stuff. They have a lot of beers, a lot of different beers that they make.
Rocket City, home of NASA, just sort of something you come to expect around here. Right.
And they have quite a few beers, and most of them, I don't know if I'd say most, probably about half have some kind of a space theme with them. The Straight to Ale ones do. What I have to say about this beer, it's one of my absolute favorite American IPAs. It's super bitter, but the crispness really levels it out, so it's not too bitter.
I thought it was an India Pale Ale.
It is. It's an IPA. It's an American IPA. It's brewed like an IPA, but with American hops.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know the difference. I'm not smart about beer, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details. I just know that there are certain types, and this is definitely an IPA. You can definitely tell with the brewing process and the different tastes in them. Like I was saying, that crispness really levels it out, so the bitterness won't overpower you. These are hazy and fruity, and we've been saving this beer particularly to do on this series because we have a bunch of these episodes to do, and I'm just going to drink Monkey Knot for a while.
And we bought a case of it at Costco.
Yes, there are 24 of them, a 24 pack at Costco for like $30.
Yeah, which is pretty rocking.
And it's a great beer. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. I give it a 10 out of 10. And that's all for the beer, because we're not going to do any liquor on these because they're going to be short and sweet. You should listen to these before your team plays on Saturday or whenever they play. But with that in mind, which school are we going to talk about today, Leah?
Today, we are starting off Tailgate Tales with Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee.
All right.
Ew.
Well, let's see what Vanderbilt's doing this week.
All right.
On September 1st, they will be playing Middle Tennessee State at home at 6:30 p.m., so that'll be in Nashville. Y'all can look for that if you're Vanderbilt fans. Now, Leah's grown up in the South her entire life, just like I have, but she knows next to nothing about football. She's not a big sports fan.
Nope.
So, we're going to try to get her attention, maybe the only way that she'll know how.
How's that, Mitchell?
Leah likes puppets. She always has.
I do.
And she's worked with puppets and worked on Sesame Street a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a special segment in these episodes called Let's Meet the Mascot.
Ooh, I don't like mascots.
Well, that's what we're doing. I'm sorry.
I have this problem. Like, I really like the idea of mascots, but I'm also terrified of people in suits.
Yeah.
But I also like to build suits because that's just fun and a challenge. And so I just have this weird attraction-repulsion thing to mascots in general.
Well, it's going to happen for 13 straight weeks at least. So right now, let's meet Vanderbilt's mascot. They go by the Commodores, and their mascot that actually goes to the games in costume is named Mr. C.
What's the C stand for?
I imagine Commodore. I'm not sure, though.
That would actually make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Probably. The mascot came into being in 1873. All of this information is coming from a Saturday Down South article that we found that had just about as much information as you could want for a mascot, which, of course, is very little, but, again, it's as much as you would want. By the time I'm done with this short explanation paragraph, you will be ready to be done. So here's what this has to say about Mr. C. Vanderbilt's sports teams have always been known as the Commodores, a nod to Cornelius Vanderbilt. The shipping and railroad magnate was never a member of the Navy, where the title comes from, but he did donate his largest steamship to the Union troops during the Civil War. The Commodores have a costume mascot, Mr. C, who is portrayed as a 19th century naval officer. And that's accurate, I would say. Their description, there's nothing remarkable about the picture for Mr. C.
I'm gonna go look it up because I don't think I've ever paid attention. I
have it on the notes here. Yeah, it's just got a big old face and some weird
that chin
eyebrows
is
and shit.
excessive.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I have a big chin, but like that's extra.
No, that's way past your
I
chin.
like his hat though. That's pretty cool.
It's a cool Commodore hat.
It's a good hat.
Yeah. So that's Mr. C and the Commodores.
The Commodores, excellent.
Yeah. So, Leah, how about we get into a story about Vanderbilt University?
I think I can take care of that. Let me click on over to my notes. Found it. Okay. All right. So, Vanderbilt is in Nashville, Tennessee, like we said before. And I'm going to do a story about human experimentation and radiation poisoning.
What? I do want it to be known that I know the school going into these, but the same as the other shows, I don't know what story she's going to tell or what it's going to be about, and I am very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable to figure it out because, like, I was looking around and there wasn't a lot of, like, anyway, I landed on this and I was like, holy shit. So you've been to college, and you...
Yes, I've been to college for a brief amount of time.
Yeah, did you ever go to a science class and or even like psychology? I think my psychology class talked about it. But like there are ethics like rules around human experimentation, right?
Right, yeah.
Nowadays, like you have to make sure that they have informed consent, so they know what's going on, they know what they're being tested for, they know what's going to happen, and all of these experiments are designed to make sure that they don't harm anybody, number one, and number two, that they are fully willing participants, they know what's going on, and if something that they're testing for can't meet these requirements, they're not going to do the test.
Okay.
Well, in 1945, that was not the case, and between the years of 1945 and 1947, researchers at the Vanderbilt University conducted a series of experiments in which they gave hundreds of pregnant women radiation poisoning because they were testing the absorption of a radioactive isotope of iron, how that absorbs and passes through the fetal blood barrier. Yeah, and they didn't tell any of them about it.
How do you not know that you're getting radiation poison,
Well,
though?
we're getting there. Okay. So the study was actually funded by the U.S. Public Health Service, and it was overseen by the state of Tennessee's health department. And all of these women were poor, basically, like country folk, and they were going to Vanderbilt, and they thought they were taking part in an experiment where they were getting basically prenatal vitamins. So they were under the impression that they were receiving like a cocktail of iron supplements to make sure that their fetus was growing correctly, and it was they were they were using poor women that were pregnant to do all of this stuff. And these women were never informed that they were part of a study about radioactive isotopes at all. So somewhere between 750 and 850 women were given these trace amounts of radioactive iron in this vitamin cocktail drink during their pregnancies, and they were tested and they were followed after they had their babies, under the guise of their pre- and postnatal care for the mother and child, but they were doing this creepy radiation testing instead.
This is very upsetting.
Let's see. So the main guy in charge of it, Dr. Paul Hahn, was the lead researcher behind all of these experiments, and like I said before, the outward "this is what we're doing" thing was that they were testing the absorption of iron during pregnancy. but that iron was radioactive.
So they were giving them pills,
They were
telling them
giving
they were iron
they
tablets?
Were drinks.
Okay.
They were these little cocktail drinks.
And they were telling them
drinks.
it was iron, like dissolved iron in the drink.
Yeah, that
and
was
it was
supposed
just
to help their baby
it was basically
develop.
sludge.
It was poison,
Ugh.
basically, yeah. So it's not exactly 100% proven, but a lot of the historians and people that have looked into it over the years basically believe that this was part of a military study about radiation exposure. And during the 1990s, when this whole thing kind of came to light to the public, the Department of Energy spokesperson, her name was Marianne Freeman, and she came out and said, Vanderbilt University was conducting research experiments involving radiation for the U.S. military during the Cold War. So that's basically,
Okay.
they've put two and two together.
She confirmed it.
She basically confirmed that, yeah, it was
I've never heard this.
military
so.
radiation testing for the aftermath of being exposed to radiation, because during the Cold War that was a real threat.
It was right after World War II, so
yeah.
there were atomic bombs dropped and everything there. So,
Exactly. So that's sort of what's going on. Now, the story actually broke into the news because three women, their names were Emma Kraft, Helen Hutchinson, and Helen's daughter Barbara, and they all filed a lawsuit against the university for exposing them to radiation without their knowledge or consent. So the New York Times...
were they babies? Were they the fetuses?
No, Emma and Helen were mothers. Barbara was a daughter. Barbara was a baby.
So she was still alive in the 90s, 50 years later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a quote from the New York Times. Mrs. Kraft, who is 72, said at a Senate hearing on January the 25th that the experiments caused the cancer death of her 11-year-old daughter, Carolyn, in 1959. So there are multiple cancer deaths that are related to this and several different types of cancer. And all of the women reported symptoms and ailments that are connected to being exposed to radiation for a long period of time. So that sucks. But like I said, that's really how this all sort of got out in the open.
Yeah.
But Vanderbilt has not taken a lot of responsibility for what happened either. They do acknowledge that they were harmful and that it was probably a terrible thing, and modern day that would never happen and they wouldn't allow it, but at the time they thought it was a safe experiment and that it was a different time period and etc. They've been very lax about taking responsibility for what happened at
different
the
time period. It was different back then.
Yeah,
of course. That's a very common thing for
universities to
Well, just a common excuse nowadays. It was a different time. You could do Asian accents back then. Nobody would care.
That's a weird thing, but whatevs.
You get it.
So the Vanderbilt spokesman at the time, his name is Wayne Wood, told, and this is a Washington Post quote, he said basically all the files were destroyed by the research teams in the 70s because the research belonged to the researchers. So the quote is, the researchers who were working on that maintained their own files. They were not Vanderbilt property and they belonged to the researchers themselves. So basically, it wasn't Vanderbilt. It was just employees of Vanderbilt that were paid by the government. So really, Vanderbilt has nothing to do with it.
Vanderbilt wasn't connected.
Yeah.
Professors and scientists and researchers that worked there were just being paid by the government. They weren't on Vanderbilt time.
Well, they were, though.
Yeah, well, that's the excuse they're saying. They weren't on company time.
Basically, that the research did not belong to Vanderbilt itself, so they can't release it. It belonged to the U.S. government because the U.S. government was paying for it.
Right. Smart.
So that's not something that none of the files can be released or anything like that because So, let's see, what's his name? Dr. Ross
Joviza?
Try that out. I think I just had a stroke, y'all.
Joviza? Who's Joviza?
Let me try that again.
Okay.
Dr. Joseph C. Ross, who...
Where did the fuzza come from?
I don't know. Was Vanderbilt's Associate Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs. And this is a quote from him about how, it would be unethical now. And here's the quote. While it would not be acceptable today to give radioactive isotopes to pregnant women, it is also clear that this was carefully evaluated at the time, and there was a feeling then that it was safe. We want to be as helpful as we can, but to create the feeling that we've done something wrong, we don't want to do that.
Okay, yeah. So again, just kind
still
of
just not
dancing around the issue
that they poisoned 800 pregnant women.
It was that many? 800?
750 to 850 women that were involved in this study. That had that were poor indigent women that were just trying to get a little bit of extra health care for their child, and a lot of those kids died of cancer. But anyway, so they had a higher number of malignancies among, obviously, all of the people that were exposed to the radiation poisoning. They had cases of acute lymphatic leukemia, synovial sarcoma, lymphosarcoma, and primary liver carcinoma. And none of those were found in the control group of a similar size. And basically, this led the researchers to believe that, radiation probably causes cancer.
Well,
bingo.
How smart. I can't believe they figured that out.
Yeah. So...
Now, admittedly... There wasn't any data on that yet, okay?
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't.
But there was probably a better way to figure that out than to give it to unsuspecting pregnant women.
And I understand it was the 40s, but that, because, the whole point of science is to make a hypothesis first. So you say, I think this is probably going to give a whole bunch of people cancer because you are introducing these mutagens into these people and making their cells replicate, and you can honestly just make the assessment that this probably isn't a good idea. We do need to study this. We need to find out, but maybe we don't do it just because.
Well, and granted, at the time they were putting radiation in fucking everything, previous. I think at this point, post World War, we figured out that atomic stuff's a problem. But before that, you've heard of the radiation girls that were painting the watch faces with radium to make them glow in the dark, and how they would dip their paintbrushes and then lick the paintbrush tips and stuff like that, and their faces rotted away from all of the cancer. You know what I mean? They were putting radiation in spring water and beauty products. They had irradiated all sorts of bullshit. But by this point, you're oh, that shit's happened. We should probably not feed radioactive iron to pregnant women. And
it's stuff like this, and admittedly more so Hiroshima, that have kept back nuclear energy, which is apparently, from everything I've ever read about it, much cleaner and much more effective. But it's still really scary to people because of what happened at Hiroshima. So it's super scary, but apparently nuclear energy is much more effective than things like coal and electricity and all that stuff.
But then you've also got the problems with things that happened, like at the Fukushima meltdown.
It was just a few years ago, wasn't it?
Fukushima, Chernobyl, that whole thing. So
I'm thinking something different. I'm thinking something different.
Fukushima is the one in Japan that they had the tsunami and it
I was saying Hiroshima, and I meant fucking
Fukushima.
Yes.
Yeah. Hiroshima was where the atomic bomb was dropped. Well, one of them.
I was just saying incorrect things.
Yeah, Fukushima is the nuclear reactor
That's what I was talking about, that and Chernobyl.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
My brother actually works with a guy that survived Chernobyl.
That's
he
upsetting.
has a lot of health problems.
Weird.
Yeah.
Strange that can happen.
All right.
Did they need to test him though? Did they need to do all that work on him?
I think they know what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
He was in Chernobyl when it happened. He was a little kid at the time, but he's an adult now. Anyway. So basically, the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments sort of did an oversight view of all of the things that happened in that time period, and they discovered that at least 27 experiments exposed pregnant women and their babies to radiation between 1944 and 1974. And after all of those findings were published, the Clinton administration was forced to publicly apologize for the U.S. government's actions and roles in those radiation studies. And that was really the only apology that anybody ever got.
Mm-hmm. I'd never heard about this. Admittedly, I was a child in the 90s, but...
Yeah, me too.
I'd never heard about any of this.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, when I was looking for weird things that happened at Vanderbilt, this was the one that stood out to me because I was like, They did what?
Yeah, it's kind of important.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Vanderbilt's a really old university, so there could be a litany of things to talk about at Vanderbilt, but this one I think is important. So.
It's crazy. I mean, and like I said, not to throw shade on Vanderbilt at all, because like they have an incredible medical facility there, and I know people that have personally been treated for all sorts of terrible, awful, no good, bad things there that the Vanderbilt staff has really, done amazing things to help them pull through. But history being what it is, just own up to the fact that you poisoned pregnant women, and then we move on from it.
But they didn't. The government did.
They did. So
they didn't. The government did.
Anyway, Vanderbilt. Huzzah!
That's it for Vanderbilt?
Yeah, that was everything.
Well, my goodness. I'm glad that we're doing these short and sweet, because I couldn't take much more of that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, God. That was rough.
I know.
I didn't know Vanderbilt did fucking radiation experiments on humans. Did they not try it on rats first?
They may have. I don't know, but they were looking at absorption during pregnancy.
Well...
So anyway, who's ready for football?
Yeah, y'all enjoy your game tonight at 6:30.
Oh.
We say tonight. This is obviously being recorded ahead of time, but it's going to release at 10 a.m. on September 1st, so...
Yes, it is.
Enjoy that football game tonight, you fucking Vanderbilt heathens.
They are not.
Hey, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
You can't trash an entire university for what a small team of people did in the 40s. You just did?
You said they should apologize.
Well, I mean, they should apologize. That's not nice, but,
It's not nice.
It's not.
I'm not going to name these, but because it's already going to be a long title. It's going to be Tailgate Tales, University of Vanderbilt. But if I did, I would name it Vanderbilt is Not Nice.
I don't think the whole thing is not nice, but I mean, when it all came out in the 90s, the administration should have said, yeah, this shit happened. It's never going to happen again. We have things in place to make sure that doesn't happen again, and we're sorry. That's it. Or
at least, put their hands up and go, whoops.
But I mean, I guess if you admit fault, you have to pay out for all the people.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it, is Vanderbilt's a very wealthy university, and they don't want to get rid of all that money.
Nope.
I think that might be part of it.
Yeah. But anyway, I hope that does not dull your football Saturday.
Yeah. Y'all crack open a beer and try to cheer up a little bit.
And pour one out for those poor irradiated pregnant women.
Well, they'd probably be better off drinking a beer than getting radiation put in their tummies.
You really shouldn't drink while you're pregnant either.
No, you shouldn't. But I'm saying it's probably better than...
Yeah, I mean, all
if you have the option of an isotope cocktail or a gin cocktail, maybe take the gin... Well, okay, maybe take the radiation over the gin. But if
gin
you
is
have
poison.
A vodka cocktail, take the vodka.
Okay, Southern Spirits doesn't think you should drink or smoke or do anything while you're pregnant.
Absolutely
Let's just put that out there.
This is like a fuck, marry, kill situation of if you have to do it, pick the vodka instead of the radiation. I don't condone it, but if it has to be done, that's our stance. That is our official stance.
I don't think I like that, but anyway.
All right, well, let's just wrap it up. Y'all find us on social media and everything and do all that shit everywhere. I'm not going to go through the normal episode stuff here. We got to keep these short, right?
All right,
You got anything to say?
If you did go to an SEC school, or you know somebody that did, and they have a really cool story that's weird or strange or ghostly, please send that to Southern Spirits Podcast at gmail.com. Put Tailgate Tales in the
subject.
Subject.
Yeah.
That's it. In the subject line, so I know what to look for. And you might hear us talking about it on the show in the next couple of weeks or so. So do that. Thanks for listening.
Stick around to hear your favorite school.
Please do. Oh, and share with your friends that like football. We'd like to grow this show a little bit. So
please.
Yeah, share it with your friends. Friends, please.